Hello and welcome. You're watching Trending Tech on News World, where we bring you the latest tech breakthroughs, trends, and gadgets from around the world. The world is rapidly moving towards a cashless economy where digital payments replace physical cash. Mobile wallets, contactless cards, and digital currencies are driving this shift. Powered by technology, consumer demand, and government policies, traditional banks must adapt while the unbanked risk being left behind. Cashless systems could change how we save, spend, and perceive wealth, reshape global trade, and streamline cross-border payments. Governments face the challenge of balancing convenience, security, and privacy in this digital financial future. To talk about this, joining us now is Dr. Ajay Dua, who is also served as Secretary in the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion at India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry from 2005 to 2007. He's currently a senior business advisor and board member for several multinational corporations. His work examines the world's rapid shift towards a cashless economy where mobile wallets, contactless payments, and digital currencies are reshaping how we spend, save, and move money. Thank you very much, Dr. Ajay Dua, for joining us again. Good to see you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Now, looking at this, my first question is, how would you define a cashless economy and how close are we to achieving it globally?
I would look at it as a very simple definition where you do not settle a transaction by payment of currency notes or coins if they are still there in any part of in some parts of the world. That is what has been deemed hitherto as cash, notes or coins. So when you are not using any of either of these to settle a transaction, a payment, and instead using other means which have evolved, I would consider that as a cashless economy. We have taken a while, if you would recall, to move away from the earliest way of settling, buying and selling, or acquiring and disposing any transaction, any deal, transaction, or any wealth, from the barter system, which prevailed from probably the Stone Age right till the medieval ages, to a currency note-based system, a so-called cash system, only in the last 200 years or so. 200 or 250 years, I'm not absolutely sure when did it really settle in. To the question, how close is the global economy? I would say we have reached that only partially so far. If you look at the developed countries, the industrialized countries of the world, the progress there in moving to a cashless society has been much more than in the developing world, the emerging countries, which have the largest population, but not the largest wealth or largest income. So there is a very clear divide between development and developing world in terms of reaching the stage of a cashless economy.
Yes, 100%. And Dr. Ajay, what are the main drivers pushing these societies towards going cashless? Is it consumer demand, technology, or policy?
Again, I think apart from the fact that there is a clear division, there is a demarcation on where it has taken off, where it hasn't. I would say the need for it and the factor driving it, the maximum, is convenience. Instead of carrying cash in your pockets, cash to be kept in the bank and writing a check, and somebody goes and draws the cash, or the cash moves from one account to the other. Now the newer ways of payment are the ones which you talked about, starting with plastic money. Those were the credit cards and the debit cards which started some decades ago. We have gone on to bitcoins and digital currency and various digi-payments, as we call them in some parts of the world, considerably. And we have been able to do that because of technology. To make it convenient, the governments, I would say not the governments really, the evolution of technology, the rapid evolution of digital technology, all that has helped in getting the move towards cashless society. And whichever parts of the world where the state, the governments have also realized the importance and they have taken a conscious decision to push it, the movement has been farther, quicker. And I would give an example of India, our country, from where I am speaking, as one large economy, fourth largest, population probably the world's biggest already. There, the move towards cashless society is visible and pretty rapid.
100%, yes, I also noticed that about India, and I feel like it is even ahead of Japan in many ways. Now, how might a cashless economy affect traditional banks and the broader financial system, according to you?
I don't think the impact of it is going to be adverse on the traditional banking system. Yes, there would be different kind of work which the banks are custodians of people's money or the state's money, would be required to discharge, because every digital payment, every cashless payment also has to be backed by a ways and means of settling that transaction. Nobody is selling a good for a free. Nobody is buying it for free. It is, instead of paying instant cash or taking credit and then settling it later, we are doing it by more convenient ways now. Signing, credit card, the debit card, or digi-payment systems. Those various linked to these, so various variations have also come into the picture. But all these settlements have to be cleared. It is not that you just move away without making a payment, you don't settle it. So how do you settle it? Everything has to go back to a clearing house, saying how much do I have to pay the other person, how much does he have to take, aggregate it. The banks are much more involved in doing it, because the money or the assets which back any transaction, any wealth, or any kind of, call it I would say, a system of credit, have to be backed by actual assets. The actual assets would be, we've been keeping them more in banks than any other forms. It could be other financial institutions, not necessarily controlled by government, or might be controlled if they are, smaller non-banking financial companies, as we call them in India. Those have only now, or in recent years, only been brought under the purview of the federal bank, the central bank, as we call it. But somebody has to discharge the functions. I'm repeating myself probably, but they do not become irrelevant, the banks nor the other financial institutions which are evolving somewhere, so others places they have evolved and are going into newer financial activities.
Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. AJ, now could going cashless widen or narrow this gap between rich and poor? And what about those who are unbanked or technologically excluded?
I considered it a very relevant question, what you were asking me.
Thank
My
you.
compliments for that. I think the basic requirement for moving from cash to the other forms which we've just been talking about, first it requires literacy. The only literate people, basic literacy who have, can move from cash to these forms. Reason? Not that the cash doesn't have to be counted. When they make a payment, they do know this is a 100 rupee note, this is a $10 note, this is a €5 note. So all those things they are able to read, keep it in mind, add and subtract while making transaction. But that's not going to be enough when we move to these various modes of cashless economies. There, they have to be able to handle fair amount of information, the feedback which they would get about the transactions they've done, who's settling them, at what rates of exchange are these settled. So all those things you can delegate the work, or passwords, has one-time passwords, OTPs. These digital, many of these digital transactions require that. Does require a fair amount of being alert, as well as literate, as well as agile, because they give you a fair short period of time to respond. If you do not respond to a password demand or any other identification means, then that transaction goes null and void. So literacy, yes, required. And similarly, you raised the word, you had asked me a question about will it be kind of leading to disparities, or will it be closing the gap between the rich and the poor? I think the effect of it might be that it widens it, because the cost of doing cashless transactions probably is once the volumes increase, or you are dealing with large amount of the settlement amounts, there could be economies of scale offered to you by the clearing houses, by the person who gets instant payment rather than in, say, by way of credit through a credit card or some other bill being given. The literate persons, people doing large amount of transactions, probably would benefit much more from it than those who are dealing with small amounts and are not able to do it very well and do not have a so-called credit rating from the financial institutions on how much they can transact in, because that will depend upon their how they were able to settle, etc. That's the commonality between banking and this. But my gut feeling is that it would, the haves, the people who are already better off, they would stand to gain from it much more.
That is so enlightening. Thank you for sharing that. And lastly, Dr. AJ, could a cashless economy change how we save, invest, or even perceive wealth?
At the end of the day, my answer to that is going to be a little ambivalent, for the simple reason that neither cash nor the other ways of settling it, what we've been discussing, actually are going to make a difference in the way the wealth is kept, invested, or kind of distributed. Because that depends upon all those attitudes or all those accumulations of wealth, etc., which have come from whichever means, businesses or inheritances, etc. Those would continue. The settling them in a cashless manner is just replacing or expediting how you settle your obligations or gifts or whatever you are indulging in or you are indulging in with cash. It is not going to make too much of a difference, except if it is very convenient. Maybe people think that instead of filling forms to invest money, now you can do it with a click of a button, and the other side responds, gives you a confirmation, etc. It might make investment easier. And if that happens on a wider scale, I would say a boost. It would be a boost for investment. It may be a financial investment, it may be a physical investment in real estate, buying bullion, or any other kind of investment, and we know business investment, etc. It would probably facilitate that, and that could give a boost rather than to saving. People fear that if savings are high, say in a particular economy or society, because that's their traditional way of keeping money. I put it in a bank, don't draw it, and I'm happy with if it gets me any interest, etc. And then we compare that interest income with the hassle of investing it in a financial instrument or with some other kind of investment. We weigh, not the hassle will probably become less, but not necessarily the risks, because investment is also related to our perception of the risk, saying how risky is this particular investment. And that will remain the same whichever way you settle it, but because you are able to settle it very quickly, if you invest, obviously your savings are going to deplete. But savings in way of liquid assets, liquid investments, that means which can be in cash very quickly, that has always been weighing or weighed against the savings, saying these are as good as saving. So there are shades of grey, but on the whole, the impact, to my mind, easier investment, depletion of savings, and the wealth probably does not change, because wealth is nothing but a stock of your income, stock of your earnings and others, and those don't really get affected whether you are saving or investing.
Very enlightening indeed. Thank you very much, Dr. A.J. Dua, for speaking to us on Trending Tech and bringing your expertise with us on Newsx World, as always. Thank you very much. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of the Trending Tech. For more tech updates and innovations, stay tuned on Newsx World.